Good morning, good morning, good morning. Perhaps it's good afternoon. Maybe it's even good evening, but wherever you are in this big, beautiful, and messy world, I'm happy to have you here. I'm Carol C. Miller, your positive life strategist, peace activator, and global hugger, coming to you with another episode of Embrace Your Life Chat, where the intention is to heighten celebrations and lessen sorrows through a positive focus. As you can tell, I have a beautiful guest here with me today that I'll introduce in just a moment, but I do like to go through my housekeeping spiel first. And one thing, especially if you're new to my work in positive focus, please let me know in comments if it's the first time you're joining me. I always like welcoming in the newbies and the people who have been here with me for a while as well. But the first thing is I'm not a big fan of the words never, always. I'm just not an absolutist, right, wrong, good or bad. There are 7 billion people on this planet. I can't begin to say what is always right or never right for 7 billion people. So I work on the majority, 0 being always negative, 100 being always positive. I don't know anybody at 0, and I don't know anybody at 100. My personal daily practices and the work I do with my coaching clients is to be in the 80 to 100% of the time. My top values are love, kindness, compassion, and peace. So my focus is to be loving, kind, compassionate, peaceful 80 to 100% of the time. What does that mean? Fear visits me, frustration, anger, disappointment, unworthiness. All of those things visit me, but because of my daily practices, they visit and they don't move in. Sometimes they visit longer than I want, but it's still, I have the tools to move through and move out of them. The second thing is, I'm a coach. I love supporting people in creating their best life. I am not a counselor, nor am I a therapist. And sometimes to live your best life, getting that type of support is helpful and possibly needed to do that. So I encourage you to think about whatever type of support you need, whether it's counseling, therapy, coaching, your best friends, whatever it is to create that support system around you to live your best life. Your best life looks different than mine. It looks different than Kate's. It's whatever is right for you. And sometimes it's moment by moment by moment. So today, I'm excited to have Kate Shipp joining me. And many times, if you've been with me before, we talk about anxiety or depression at a cursory level because that's not my background and training. And so, again, if it's something that is really has a hold of your life, that is where I encourage you to seek outreach to someone like Kate or a counselor or a therapist or just you're worthy of having the tools that you need to live your best life. So, we're going to be talking about how to move through those hard times in our lives. And Kate's going to give us some tips on that. But before I introduce her, let me read her bio, and then I'm just going to ask her to share a little bit more about herself, too. But Kate Shipp is a Christ centered yoga therapist certified with International Association of Yoga Therapy. For the past decade, Kate has specialized in seeing clients for mental health and trauma recovery. She uses the teachings of Jesus and the philosophy and practices of yoga, combined with the neuroscience of trauma, to help clients overcome painful pasts, remember their wholeness, and live their lives of peace and joy. Welcome, Kate. And I just wanted to say really quickly um, the combination of the Christ and yoga. I used to do social media for many different big speakers, and one of them was Iyanla Van Zandt. She
Mm,
she has a massive education in so many different things. She's a reverend and she loves yoga and meditation. And when there would be posts about yoga on her page, you'd be amazed how many people did not like that because they were coming from their Christian background on it. And it shocked me. I did not know that the two could not coexist together. And it obviously, you and I both know it can. I was just surprised to see how many people did not see those being something. So I love the fact that you combine that in your own work. So thank you for joining us and let us know a little bit more about you.
yeah, thank you for having me here. This is so exciting. I feel very blessed this
And we
morning
both
to
wore
get to be
blue.
here. We both wear blue. I know. So we're in that vibe. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the intro. So yes, as Carol said, for the past decade, I have dedicated my career to supporting people of all ages, as young as 7, as old as in their 80s, in navigating what I'll say a journey of peacefulness, of reconnecting to their heart, And oftentimes that comes with processing really painful things that may still be holding, I call it holding our hearts hostage to our past.
Mm,
And yes, being a Christ centered being, which means I use the teachings of Jesus. I'm not religious in that way, but I do believe in Jesus, and that is the center of my life. And I think it's important to name that because oftentimes, like you said, when people hear that and then they hear yoga, they get really, they're like, huh? It's like when a
yeah.
dog tilts its head and it's really confused,
Yeah.
right? And I have certainly had many experiences of being judged for that and learned many ways to conversate around it because it's all love.
Yeah.
Right? And they're all, and there's practices and philosophies that help us access that part of our heart.
And I love that too because I even think for myself, my organization's called Positive Focus, and there's a lot of people when you as soon as you say the word positive, you're like, "You're not living in reality, rainbows and unicorns is what you." And I'm like, "I love rainbows and unicorns, and I know that there's a lot of hard stuff that goes on in my life, in others' lives, and in the world." So for me, it's about bringing love, kindness, and compassion in a positive light to those things. But it's really easy to go black and white. Positive, you're not living reality. If you're a follower of Jesus, you can't like this. And if you're a follower of this, you can't like Jesus or whatever. So it's just interesting to me how people box things in so easily.
Well, it is, and to speak to that for a moment, because it really does play into our intention for our conversation today, is when we have, like you said before earlier in your opening, the absolutes, right? Never always,
Right.
that we're actually limiting our scope of capacity to be in a, loving, happy place in this world. And what I had found in all of the years of my own training, and then in my business, and then in my own trauma recovery, was a lot of what I call spiritual bypassing, where people will use the spiritual practices of Christ teachings, of yoga, of any other
Yeah.
religion or secular teachings to avoid feeling their humanity. And that
Yeah.
only actually created a deeper wound within them because they couldn't understand. And these are words that I've heard over and over again, why, from someone saying, if you follow Jesus, you shouldn't have anxiety. If you really practice yoga, you shouldn't have negative thoughts. And there were
Right.
all of these really unhealthy bookends, right? And we forget that full
Yeah.
space of gray in between.
And I think for me personally, 15 years ago, I was that just be positive, life's good. And the more I worked on myself and stuff, it's like, okay, no, there's a lot of hard stuff. I can find the grace in it. But just saying, like, I'm sure people 15 years ago when I said that probably wanted to slap me because they were going through a hard time. And me sugarcoating it by saying just be positive was not helpful.
Yeah, and I think the intent is good,
Right.
right? Like I think when people say that, they're coming from the goodness of their
Yeah,
heart because it's hard for them to see someone they care about hurting.
absolutely.
And I don't think the intent is to deny being human and the emotional experiences that we have. I just think that my opinion and experience has been people have a hard time navigating the sensational experiences of emotions, right? Anxiety creates all these symptoms, depression creates all these
Right.
symptoms. And when we see someone we love hurting and we feel that, especially if we're someone who's more empathically in tuned, then it's like, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
Right. And that tendency to want to fix, save, and rescue people
Right.
instead of I will help hold a container of love. And a message that I share often is I will see you in love and hold you in love until you remember you are love.
I
And
love
that
that.
gives space for all of our humanity to be present. And it actually helps us move through it much faster.
Absolutely. And I remember somebody telling me this a long time ago. By me fixing someone, I'm taking away their life experience of what they need to actually move. And it's not easy, especially when it's
Mm-mm.
somebody you love. You want to make them feel good right now, not in 6 months or 3 years or 2 days. But it really is diminishing their own experience through it. So I love that you say to hold that space for them to come to it themselves. I usually say that I will walk through with you through this experience, but it's I can easily it's something that it's a daily practice for me is to remember I am not here to fix people. I'm here to support them in seeing themselves. But I can go
Yeah.
into fix mode. Like that's
I
something I have to stay conscious of.
Me too, right? And I have a 15-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter.
Oh
And
my.
so we're in it. We are in the mess right now,
Yeah.
guys.
I have
And
nieces and nephews, and that's exactly where I need to go. Wait a second, I can't fix them. They are
yeah, and
absolutely
in that
amazing
you
as they are.
just want to, like I tell my kids, I just want to put them in bubble wrap in a cocoon and send them away to the woods because it's just hard when you see people making choices that all right, there's going to be a pretty big lesson in that,
Right.
right? But I think that goes to the day-to-day reflection of the goodness of people.
Yeah,
And I truly believe in the goodness of people.
me too.
And as someone who's walked a treacherous journey of recovery from complex PTSD, it took me a long time to really believe and see the goodness in humanity. And I think that's part of that positive focus is, there's all of the other stuff and it's going to be there and we can honor it and experience it, but we still get our choice of where we direct our energy.
Absolutely. So we were talking earlier about trauma, and I'm curious as not the actual definition of trauma, but your thoughts on trauma because I do think some people don't even think they've had a traumatic experience because it's not as bad as Mary down the street who had a really bad thing happen to her. Mine is just sort of, hard to deal with. How do you describe that with people and to feel what they need to feel in their own experience?
So, the way I define trauma is unprocessed emotional experiences that hold us back from living our best life. Pretty simple, right? Because
Yeah,
I don't get to decide and you don't get to decide what's traumatic for somebody,
yeah,
right? And I've had people who I've worked with over the years where some of the horrific experiences, and anybody would say that's traumatic. And then I've had people who've had day to day experiences that a lot of people have had, and that was traumatic. And then I've had people who've had some pretty harrowing experiences, and that wasn't traumatic for them.
right,
And it's like, okay, what really is this? And as I, went through my trainings and then educating further, it was like the unprocessed emotional pain is what hooks us in. And our nervous system it's almost like a clog in a drain. It
hmm,
gets stuck, the energy gets stuck. And then anything we experience in life that reminds our nervous system of the same energy, not the situation, right? Of the
right,
same energy, it like hits that. And as it hits that, it creates that trigger response in our body. And so it's not so much about evaluating a spectrum of what's the worst trauma, what's the least trauma. It's how did it
right.
affect someone?
Yeah, I think it reminds me of an experience that I had. I would love to say this was 10 years ago, but it wasn't. It was like 4 years ago, maybe. I love Michael Franti. He's one of my favorite musicians. And I went with a friend, and he always has people go on stage to dance and sing. And so my friend knew how much I loved him. So he's like, "You are going up there when it's time." I'm, "No, I'm not. Not happening." And so when it was time, my friend kind of pulled me up on stage. I was so mortified that this wasn't the traumatic experience for me, but I was like, I got to get to the back. I got to get to the back. I tripped over Jay, the guitarist's equipment, and landed hard. And I was humiliated.
Mhm.
Nobody else cared. Nobody else, like my good friend who I'm here with is an actor. She's like, everybody has fallen on stage at some point. But for me, it was like total humiliation. It took me quite a while before I could even laugh about it. So many other people could have gone on that stage, fallen, gotten up, and like, ha ha, it hurts, but not be that. It was past embarrassment for me. It was that humiliation, and it reminded me of Brene Brown talking about the difference between embarrassment and humiliation,
Mhm.
where I think it was on Oprah, where she said, if the teacher in your class calls out your kid and says, that was an F paper and tells everybody. Embarrassment would be you would go home and tell your mom. Humiliation, you keep it to yourself, kind of thing. So I
Mhm.
just thought that that was really interesting. And obviously now I can talk about it. So I'm no longer in humiliation about it. But that situation, again, probably the majority of people would not have been impacted like I was falling on stage. But so it really goes back to the personal experience of it.
Yeah, and not not diminishing anyone's emotional pain.
Yeah.
Right? Because someone might say, "Oh, yeah, I've fallen on stage." And I can tell you right now, if that happened to me, I would have been humiliated too. Right?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's when we have a perception of what trauma is, what trauma looks like, and maybe that's an incorrect perception because of our misunderstandings. I think sometimes people are quick to diminish another's pain and or
I
use
think it
things
makes
like,
people uncomfortable.
yeah. And yeah, and again, I'm in that goodness of people. I don't know that people intentionally diminish, but I've
Right.
also had so many times over the years of where it's like, oh, well, mine wasn't as bad as so and so's. And so is it even relevant?
Right.
And here's what I'll say, if it's causing you suffering, it's relevant.
I like
Right?
that.
And it's a
Say
really
that again. If
simple,
it's
if it's
causing you
causing you
suffering.
suffering, it's relevant.
Yeah.
We don't have to evaluate the 0 to 10 scale on how relevant is it.
Right.
Right? If it's causing you suffering or withholding you from experiencing peace and joy in your life, it's relevant. And that doesn't mean everything is trauma. And I think that's an important thing to name as well, because trauma is such a big word right now
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And, there's certain hot words that the media picks up on, and trauma is one of them. I mean, every other ad I see is a trauma summit. And so sometimes I think we become desensitized because we see the word. And
Right.
then sometimes we have an unhealthy relationship with a word. So we don't want to even potentially name that that could be something that you're experiencing. So when I give that definition of unprocessed emotional experiences, right, causing you suffering, it's just simply to be aware that it could be something really huge, right? What they'll call, adverse childhood experiences, or it could be something quite, simple that you overlook that you don't realize that's still affecting you. And normalizing being human, and that our suffering is not unique. Our stories are unique,
Right.
but our suffering isn't. And when we break it down to those emotional layers, we all have the same emotions, whether we experience them or not, or whether we can name them. I mean, a lot of people will name embarrassment, but they don't name humiliation. So I love that you gave that as the example.
Yeah.
And I can see when I work with kids and teens, not as much as I used to, but that is a very common wound for them, is humiliation or fear of being humiliated.
Right.
Hmm.
And I hadn't even thought of it until I heard Brene Brown's. I'm like, that's a perfect description of the difference between embarrassment and humiliation.
Yeah, and I think you're naming the humiliation piece going into shame,
Yeah.
right? That I must not be good enough. Different
Right.
than, I tripped, I made a mistake.
Nobody else fell on there getting up
Yeah,
on that stage but me. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And in the nature of the topic today of how do we move through these hard things, I think what number one, we have to be able to name them.
Yeah.
We don't have to know why we're experiencing them, because here's what I also know is the brain is so smart as our biocomputer to block memories of things that we're not supposed to remember. But our body is like the cloud, and it remembers everything and holds everything. And so, where you may not have a conscious memory, your body has the subconscious and unconscious memory, and it presents through sensations. It can present through symptoms. It will present through sometimes disease. And when we can access the body layer and then move into the energy within the body, it naturally knows how to clear itself. The hardest part is getting our ego out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we went live, you were talking about how the moving through this, like the yoga practices and stuff. So
Hmm.
talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, yoga as a system, as a science, right, is designed to help you remember your wholeness. And a lot of times people think of yoga as a spiritual practice because it
And
realigns you.
poses, just
And
posing.
poses. Yeah.
Yeah.
People think, oh, there's just the poses,
Yeah.
right? The poses are one part of an 8 limb system that is designed to really reconnect you to the light in your heart and to help you embody that light through the hardships of being human. So I look at yoga as like an art of human development, because your spirit already knows. Right.
Right.
And when your spirit is leading your life, it's like, come on, human, let's catch up. Right. And so, all the ways that your humanness is not aligned with love, it tries to bring that forward. And there's ethical practices that come within the practices of yoga that we can align with. There's breath work, there's meditation. The postures are so intuitive because the way they were designed opens up your energy lines. And so where you get stuck in your body is where your energy's stuck.
Right.
And it's not meant to be to push through the pain or to push yourself into a pose. You allow the pose to meet your body where it is. And then with breath and with that gentleness and compassion, the energy starts to flow and open. And what I found is difficult for people in the practices of yoga is then how do I manage when something really uncomfortable comes up? Right? Because I owned a yoga studio for 5 years. And nobody came to yoga because they feel good. It just doesn't happen. Right? Like it's kind of like most of the time people don't go to a doctor because they feel good.
Right.
People come into a yoga studio for a multitude of reasons, right? They want to de-stress, they want to relieve symptoms of anxiety or depression, they want to lose weight, they want to get flexible, fit. Like never did anyone walk in the door and was like, I feel great, I'm here for yoga. It just doesn't happen that way. But something in them knows there's something in this practice, right? That now is scientifically proven to help us live a healthier life. And so, but, so they would come and they would come regularly. And then it was like clockwork. About 3 weeks in, they'd be like, yoga's not working anymore. I'd be like, help me understand. What do you mean yoga's not working anymore?
I learned everything already. I'm on to the next.
Well, no, they're like, I'm angry now, right? I thought yoga was supposed to make you feel peaceful. And I said, here's what yoga does, right? Yoga brings all the ways you don't love yourself to the surface so you can learn to love that part of you too. It's just what it does, right? Because anything we deny within ourselves is causing suffering.
Right.
And so if we're denying anger because maybe we have an unhealthy relationship due to people from our past who were angry, and now anger starts showing up because your body's trying to move that energy out, and you're like, no, I don't like anger. I'm going to push it down. I'm going to push it away. I'm going to avoid.
Pretend it doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. Or pretend it doesn't exist. And what does that do? It just boils it. Right. And so in coaching people through the yogic practices, we start to understand that when emotions come up, it's like a wave in time that was frozen that's finally melting back into the ocean. It's just trying to find its way back home. And when we continue to block it, it creates further suffering within us. But then we have to learn, how do we hold it in love when it feels so painful? Right? And that's where for me, I start tuning into my ego cannot hold my own anger and love. It's actually impossible energetically.
Okay.
Right? But the spirit can. Right? The spirit within us, within you, within everyone who's watching can hold anger and love. It already knows how because it is love. So if we can rest back and it as this ocean of love, and then we see that every wave has its place in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the ocean isn't sitting there looking at the waves like, oh, you're too intense or you're too weak or you're too calm, right? It's just there. It's a container for it. And that's what yoga teaches us is we are the container and we are the contents of that container. That when we identify as an emotion, right? I am angry. Now we've disidentified with the truth of who we are, which is love. But if I say I am love and I'm experiencing anger, that's very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so even in moving through hard things in day-to-day life, we have to look at how are we labeling our experiences. So when we're naming it, we name I'm feeling anxious and I know I'm anxious because my heart is racing or because my stomach is in knots. So the second piece is then noticing the body sensations that go with the experience we're having.
And what do you find, because this was something like even like I mentioned before, 15 years ago, I'm positive, everything's wonderful. It took me a long time and it's still not my strength is to feel it in my body. So what are ways that you help people or what would you tell people to start experiencing like if you would have asked me 15 years ago, I'm like, I don't know. Like I have zero idea where I'm feeling it in my body.
So the number one thing that withholds people from really overcoming a lot of their trauma is a disconnect to sensation in their body.
Okay.
And Bessel van der Kolk talks about this in The Body Keeps the Score. Gabor Mate talks about it in his When the Body Says No. Dr. Ariel Schwartz in her complex PTSD books talks about it, because when we've had trauma, right, and when we've disconnected from the physical body and those experiences because they're just too much, right, we have
Right.
to come back into safety within the body and learning that our body is for us, not against us.
Okay.
And when we start realizing the body is for us, then we start being able to have safe experiences with our body. And usually for clients, that starts with a very simple body scan. Be aware of your toes, right? Be aware of your feet, right? Feel your
Okay.
feet pressing into the earth. We keep it really simple and we don't associate experiences with it. It's just in this moment right now, notice the sensations in your legs, right? Can you feel your legs,
Okay.
right?
That makes sense.
And so it's very gentle and subtle, because the intent is we don't want to push the nervous system into some sort of stress response.
Right.
We want to keep them in this beautiful capacity that says, I'm safe here. And oftentimes, I mean, honestly, that takes the longest in the healing journey when it comes to trauma recovery, is people are very afraid of their own body because it was through the body that their pains were experienced, right? It's through our nervous system that we
Right.
experience life. So whether it was a horrible childhood experience, whether it was a car accident, whether it was, falling on the stage, the body has an imprint of that memory. And oftentimes people blame their body instead of soothing themselves. And that goes back to developmental pieces. So the safety comes with I can put my hands on my arms and feel my hands touching my arms. And
Mm-hmm.
then can I name an adjective that goes with that? Right. So when my hands touch my arms, I feel that my hands are cool to the touch.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Okay.
And that starts building a new scaffolding on the relationship with the physical body. Because once we have the ability to be with our body in a new way, then we can start tapping in to the energy within us, which is what helps resolve the unprocessed pain.
Yeah, and that's like part of the I neuroscience is just so fascinating to me, where you kind of think that this is what it is and this is what you have, but you can rebuild and retrain and change all of that stuff through those different techniques and neuroscience. I It's just mind blowing.
It is mind blowing. I completely agree with you. And it's always evolving. And the neuroscience of trauma is a relatively, you know, I'll say newer
Yeah.
field from the data that's coming out. I mean, these are things that have been studied for a very long time. And something that I always find interesting is when I was in my yoga therapy studies, I learned that in India, they don't diagnose PTSD. And I was talking with one of my yoga
Interesting.
therapy teachers. It's really interesting. And he works at one of the most well known kind of ashrams out in India. For people go to this ashram when doctors have said there's nothing else we can do for you. Right. And so they're sent there for like last case help. Right. And what they find is if they start looking at the whole being, right, our physical body, our energy body, our mental and emotional body, our wisdom body, which is related to our intuition, and then our spirit, and we're like, where's everyone getting stuck? What's causing the blockage? And it's usually always in the mental emotional body. But we
Makes perfect
access,
sense.
yeah, but we access that through the energy layer. And the energy presents in a physical form, like frozen shoulder. Okay. But what he said is they don't diagnose PTSD because they look at PTSD as an imbalance in the nervous system due to unprocessed energy.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, I love that, because what it's saying is this is a symptom of something that's out of balance. It's not who you are. It doesn't define, your experience of future life. It's something is off. And what's fascinating about it, has neuroscience has proven, what's off is your vagus nerve. Right? This main cranial nerve that runs from your gut, heart, and brain and into every organ that you have, right, can have inflammation or could have developed in an unhealthy way due to traumatic experiences. And then they've been able to prove, and through quite simple exercises, you can repair that.
I
Right? It's
love
not
that.
a forever thing. So there's so much hope for healing. And if there's so much information all over now on the internet on how to work with your vagus nerve, yoga's been doing this for thousands of years, right? Before anyone knew anything about the vagus nerve,
Uh-huh.
right? Which is why you'll see a lot of yoga and yoga therapy being used in mental health and trauma recovery platforms now.
That's
And
amazing, and I think it reminds me of just often when we're in the challenge, like, I talk to people about finding the gratitude in the challenge. It's easier, like, there's been things that I've gone through, like, absolutely don't wanna repeat them again, but after I went through it, I was able to say, "Oh, I grew from that, I developed new relationships, let go of some relationships," or whatever, but I was able to after see why I experienced it. But when you're able to, and like it sounds like with, yoga and these studies, where you're able to experience it in the moment to shift it, you're just going to shift it quicker.
yeah, and it's as fast and simple and yet uncomfortable
Yeah. Oh,
as
yeah.
you think about something from the past that's still holding suffering over you. It immediately brings an energy starting to move in the body. All of you might be thinking about something right now, and it
Yeah.
immediately starts activating something in your body. And then if we can turn the movie off and just breathe with the sensations, now we're saying to ourselves, I'm no longer going to abandon myself in this uncomfortable place. I'm going to
Oh,
breathe with myself, and I'm going to let the energy move. And the body may shake, it may jolt, you might have tears or other emotions. And if you can ride that wave out, eventually there is a deep well of peace that you rest into. And it can take seconds, minutes, hours. It could take many sessions of experience. It just depends on how deep that neural groove is in your nervous system. And we don't have to be afraid of it. We don't have to be afraid of our own emotions because they're not going to hurt us. They're just uncomfortable to feel.
right.
Yeah. And so there's so much beauty in understanding that your body and your brain were perfectly designed to clear this when given the right conditions to do so.
And not ignoring it because
Yeah.
it is often more comfortable to pretend it. I'm too busy today. I can't even think about this. I'll deal with it tomorrow or not deal with it at all because
Yeah,
it
and so
just,
the compartmentalization is important, right? To be able to say, like, I'll use a jar metaphor. I need to put this in the jar and shelf it
yeah,
because I got to see clients today, right? And
yeah,
then my job is to go back to that jar, open it, be with myself, or go to therapy, or, I see a therapist regularly still because I love it. And to have a sacred witness as we're processing our pain. It's very hard to be both for ourselves in that moment,
right.
right? And what you were speaking of when you can find gratitude, it's part of what they'll call post-traumatic growth, is at the after we're through the processing of the trauma, there's a huge growth phase. And what's fascinating on this, studies and science have shown that the end of your DNA strands that are called telomerase, when there's a lot of unprocessed trauma, they're really short and frayed, almost like a split end of a hair. But then as we process the trauma and then we're in the post traumatic growth phase, those telomerase grow. And the length of those is related to our longevity in life. And so
Interesting.
they've been able to show this is part of epigenetics. They've been able to show not only can we repair the past, we can then change our genetics moving forward.
Wow, that is
Right.
very cool.
And to me, that's so empowering because of things from my past. It has hurt my children. And as I've healed and they're healing, I know that our genetic and DNA line is changing. Right. And I think, wow, what a legacy to leave is the
Yeah.
change of ancestral and generational patterning in our DNA.
That brings up, I mean, that's amazing. But just even when you said that while you healed and know that your own trauma impacted your children and they're on their own journey, how do you work through that? Because you love your kids, you certainly don't want to harm them, and yet it's still their journey.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
how do
we've
you,
been in that for a while now, and we're
yeah,
in a new phase of it again. And it's not easy to do if you haven't done your own work.
got
Right?
it?
If you are a parent or caregiver of a child and you haven't done your work on yourself to recover and repair, it's very hard to see your child suffering due to something that you projected onto them. Right?
Got it.
Because
Yeah.
in that moment, you can't fix, save, and rescue them. Right?
Even though you want
Even
to.
though you want to, right? And you have to allow them the space to be mad at you. And you have to allow them the space to be able to name that it is because of things that you did that causing them this pain. Right?
Yeah.
And here's what's amazing. People think kids are resilient. They aren't resilient, right? They're adaptable. Kids' nervous systems and their brain haven't developed the resiliency yet, right? That comes with age and over time. But they adapt to their environment to survive. And then once their environment is safe, it's almost like their nervous system starts shedding all the things out that they don't need to hold on to anymore because life is safe now.
Okay.
And my kids have named it so beautifully, and they can even give you like a year. It's like everything changed from this point on. And because there's been consistency in this new safety, in this new family dynamic, as they're shedding their past, I'm able to show up and be the mom that they needed then that I wasn't able to be.
I love
Right?
that.
And so it's beautiful and really hard.
I was gonna say beautiful.
Yeah.
That's why I say life is beautiful and messy
Yeah. The
because there's a
and, like, we can't
yeah.
forget the power of
It's
and. I say to
yeah,
my clients all the time, and I even have an ampersand sign in my office because of
yeah.
that.
Because a lot of people, it's like, but it's like, no, it's and or, yeah.
And,
It's not one
yeah.
or the other. And it reminded me of Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor would say, keep them
Oh,
alive until 25 because their
yeah.
brains aren't
Mhm.
ready to do the hard work until after that. And I think it's important, like I talk about not parent child experiences, but we get into this place when somebody has done something horrific, at a national, a personal level. Um, their actions, I'm not remotely saying are okay, but if you look at their backstory of what brought them to that moment, you can have compassion.
Mhm.
So, your backstory of what brought you to your dynamics with your family, there's compassion there as well. So, it's easy that we tend to want to go into black and white. You're wrong, I'm right, and not see the complexities of life.
Yeah. And to finish up that thought on the post traumatic growth piece on it is when we can look back and make meaning from our pain
Mm,
and
yeah,
see the purpose that we've chosen. So what people say a lot, like everything happens for a reason, and I don't agree with that. I say every response happens for a reason. Our power is in our choice and our response. And so I will never say to someone, and I know I'm using the word never, but I'm serious on that. Okay. I
yeah,
will never say to someone that their abuse or their trauma was intentional
right,
because I don't believe that. What I do believe is that we are given the power to choose what we do with it, and that is intentional. And when we own that power, then we get to make these really dynamic shifts in our life, right?
yeah,
We go from victim to victor, right? And in that stage of victory, now we can look back and say, oh, I see how, because I chose to show up in this way, now I'm moving forward in my life.
yeah. Because I think a lot of times people don't allow the words to be victimized. And it's if you live in that victimization for on and on and on, but there are experiences where you are in that moment and then you get to decide maybe not that moment that day, but then it's your choice how you're going to move through it and become that victor in the situation.
Yeah. And some of you know, some of you may not know, is that my book that I published a month ago. So I wrote a memoir called I Am Strong Enough Now, God Thanks. My journey from trauma to
Very
truth.
good book, by the way, everyone.
Thanks. There's a piece in there where I talk about how I did not want to be a victim, and I had such judgment over that
Yeah.
word and that people who lived in the victim mindset. But then I learned the only way to overcome trauma is to let yourself be a victim. You have to, because it happened to you,
Because you
right?
have
It
to feel
happened
it.
to
Yeah.
me. You have to feel that. And it doesn't mean you dwell in it, but you have to acknowledge, yes, this happened to me,
Right.
right? I was a victim of a lot of really awful things. And I chose to overcome. right? And the practices to overcome are very personal, because what works for one person may or may not
Right.
work for another. And what works for someone for this time frame may not work 2 years from now, right? And so as we're constantly evolving, what we need to get through hard times evolves too. Something really, really interesting is that I was talking with my therapist when COVID was really huge, right, in the world. And I was talking with her, and she said, Kate, do you know the people that are really not having a very hard time with COVID? And I'm like, who? And she goes, those that have a lot of trauma. It's like, because they're used to this.
Oh,
They've
that makes
lived
sense.
this their whole
That
life. I'm like, that makes sense, because I wasn't really having an issue with it. And
yeah.
she goes, your nervous system developed in chronic state of fear.
Well, and
And
that's interesting because, a friend of mine grew up in Lebanon in wartime, and so obviously he's compassionate about the Ukraine situation, but it doesn't impact him like it does me, and I'm like, "How is this possible?" And
yeah,
that makes complete sense that his nervous system is developed differently than mine because of those experiences he had as a child.
yeah. And it's when we can notice that, again, it's not good, bad, right, wrong. It's just
Right.
different.
Yeah.
And she had said that a lot of the people that were struggling the most were those that would come in and say, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever had to live through or experience in my life. And they're having panic attacks every day because of what happened with COVID. And yes, the empathy and compassion. And I remember in Jess saying something like, it's amazing to me that there are people walking in this world who do not have trauma in their nervous system. And she's like, there are quite a few of them. I'm like, that's beautiful and amazing
Yeah.
and absolutely incredible to me, because that was not my story. And I obviously work in this every day. So it's not the people that I surround myself with, their story. But what happens is if we don't know how to attune to ourselves and to be aware of when our nervous system goes into that fight or flight response, or that faint or freeze shutdown response, the humiliation is the faint or freeze, right? Then we don't know how to bring ourselves up or down out of it.
Right.
And there
And then we
are,
label ourselves as bad and wrong for
yeah,
experiencing it.
like, no, we're human and we're navigating this in the best ways that we know how. And, when we learn and know better, hopefully we do better by practicing it.
Right.
And I think what is really critical is we have to practice the tools and skill sets when we're not in a stress response.
Right.
Yeah. It's like you don't just brush your teeth when you have a cavity, right? You brush your teeth because you
I
hope you
I
don't
have
have
I
cavities.
have a niece who thinks that that's the only time she needs to brush her teeth, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll let her listen to this later. Like, "Kate says you have to brush your teeth daily."
All the time. Right? And metaphorically, from that place of, if we're taking care of ourselves and doing the things daily that help sustain our energy,
Yeah.
then when something does happen, we're less likely to crumble in it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I talk
And
about that a lot 'cause
yeah,
that's why it's daily practices for me, and I don't every day do the same thing, but that's when I catch myself feeling things that are like, "Oh, I need to get back into doing X, Y, and Z," because that keeps me more balanced into being ready for the harder moments in life, and I think it always cracks me up because people will say, "Well, of course your life is easy. That's why you're so positive because your life is easy." I'm like,
mm,
"Oh, no, 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 it's not," and I work through it and I do look for the gratitude and everything, but I have challenges and struggles just like uh, the majority of people out there. There may be a few people, like your therapist had said, that has never experienced trauma, but I suspect the vast majority of us have had some hard, challenging times in our life, or maybe going through it right now as well.
yeah, I agree with you. And I think there's a something in my heart around, I don't pray for an easy life. I do pray for the strength to get through a hard
Yeah,
life, because we are guaranteed there's going to be hard experiences,
right.
right? And
Well,
that's also how we grow.
yeah, and learn to appreciate the easier times even. Like, I personally do
Mhm.
believe if everything was easy and fun and laughter and joy all the time, we take it for granted because we don't have an experience of it not being just our norm. So I think the challenging times also help us stay in appreciation for when things are moving smoother in our lives that we work for.
I 100% agree. And something that I think to name that's often unnamed in trauma recovery is when things are good, that can be more triggering than when things are bad.
Yeah.
And
When's that
people,
other shoe gonna drop?
yeah, and people, and I lived this, right? I was so avoidant of joy because I was so scared of joy being taken away.
Yeah.
And so I had to, not only, it's not only about increasing your capacity to manage stress better, it's increasing your capacity to be in joy, to be in that happiness and goodness,
Right.
and being able to recognize, like, I'm allowed, it's safe to enjoy my life, right?
That is
Instead
a
of always
beautiful
being on
affirmation,
alert.
everyone. It is safe to enjoy my life. I
Yeah,
love that.
and practice that for yourself. If you're someone who struggles letting things be good, practicing allowing goodness is in and of itself another tool.
Yeah. One of the things that I use with affirmations, again, the affirmation you want it to be believable or a stretch. But if I were to say it is safe to be me or it is safe to have joy in my life, and my immediate response is no, it's not. That's caused a lot of pain. Is to go, I'm in the process of allowing it to be safe in my life or
Mm,
shifting it completely. But you do want it to be something that resonates with you because the back of your head immediately is telling you no, then it's probably not a strong affirmation for you.
yeah. And when I'm someone who believes in the practice of forgiveness, and when I first started my forgiveness journey, I had to say to myself, I am willing to consider forgiveness.
I
And
love
like
that.
that was the first sentence. I'm willing to consider it. It certainly wasn't I forgive. Like, and there was a lot
Yeah,
to that.
yeah,
I'm willing to consider. So I hear what you're saying. And if
I
there's
like
that,
that. I'm
yeah,
willing to consider that it is safe to experience joy in my life.
yeah,
I love that. Yeah, because I mean, the whole forgiveness, especially forgiving yourself for things,
yeah.
it can be quite challenging. Well, thank you
Hmm.
so much, Kate, for joining. Where is it? What's going on? What are you up to? How can people learn more or stay in touch? Give
Yeah.
it
So
all to me.
my website is kateship.com. And so you can read all about me there. There's a bunch of different free meditations on my website if you go to the shop page. So if you're someone that likes to listen to meditation downloads, there's a few free ones there. I do have a really special group that starts May 4th. So in just over a week, I run a 6-month group mentoring program called Spiritually Embodied Living, and it takes 8 women, and I have 4 spots open. And we go through each month a layer of your being. So we do physical body, energy body, mental body, emotional body, wisdom body, and spirit body.
Mm,
And it really starts navigating what we've talked about today: is where are we getting stuck, right? What's causing the suffering? And then simple daily practices that we can do to shift that energy, right? To create that life that you love. So that is starting in a week. So if you're interested in diving a little deeper with me, that's an offering. And then my book is available through Amazon. I highly
I was
recommend
just gonna
it.
say, what's the name of your book? I don't
Yeah,
think
the
we've
book is
said.
I Am Strong Enough Now, God, Thanks. My Journey from Trauma to Truth. So, and the book title has a sarcasm layer and a sweet, loving
Yeah,
layer.
kind of
Uh,
a life layer, I would
a
say.
life layer,
A
right?
little bit of
I'm strong
beauty and a
enough
little
now,
bit of
God,
mess.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you're someone who likes to read, there is no Audible yet. That is something I'm going to be working on to have that. So Carol, I'm so
awesome.
grateful. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, and I wait, are you gonna do the Audible yourself?
I am going to do the Audible myself.
Excellent. I think that'll be amazing. I look forward to it. I am
Thank
much
you.
more of a audio book um, devourer these days and reader, so
Okay.
I am excited to hear it. But thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. And everyone, I did not. I'm sorry. I usually pay closer attention to the comments, so I will come back in later. But I did scan and I did not see specific questions. But if there is something, either put it in there and Kate might look back later. I will definitely look back later, and if you have any topics that you would like me to bring a little bit more love, kindness, compassion, and peace to, put those in the comments too, because I really do like to pick things from the community. And I love the fact I did not ask today. Usually I ask, where are you all joining me from? And there's often people from all over the world. So I love that we have that community here. You just see the two of us on screen, but all of you are part of this. So thank you so much. I'll be back Thursday. I'm not sure what the topic is, but it will be something to heighten celebrations and lessen sorrows. And remember, you matter. You matter to me. You matter to the world. And most importantly, you matter to you. So have a great rest of your day. Take care of yourselves. Now you've got some more tools to work with and to be gentle with yourselves as you become the best you can become. Talk to you soon on Thursday for sure. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank
So,
you.
so long for now.